Tires crunched on gravel that fateful night. A routine stop turning into a nightmare. Two overzealous cops thought they had an easy target. A distinguished man pulled over for a phantom infraction. Little did they know, their actions would ignite a firestorm, exposing a deep-seated injustice within their own ranks. This isn't just a story of a wrongful arrest, it's a high-stakes confrontation with prejudice and power, where the victim holds a shocking secret that will turn the hunters into the hunted. Will justice prevail, or will the system protect its own? Stay tuned to uncover the explosive truth. Don't forget to subscribe, and leave your comments below. The crunch of tires on gravel shattered the evening quiet, as Robert Jones, a distinguished 50-year-old man known for his calm leadership, turned onto Elm Street. He was returning from a long day of meetings with community leaders in Atlanta, Georgia. His unassuming silver sedan blended with the suburban landscape, his thoughts drifting to his wife, Michelle, and her famous apple pie waiting at home. Suddenly, the piercing flash of blue and red lights filled his rear-view mirror, an unwelcome intrusion. Robert's grip on the steering wheel tightened almost imperceptibly. He glanced at his speedometer, 32 in a 35 zone. No traffic violations, no broken lights. Yet, the patrol car's siren wailed, demanding he pull over. "Stay calm, Robert," he murmured, signaling and easing his car to the side of the road. He knew the routine, hands visible, movements slow and deliberate, a polite demeanor, a performance he'd perfected not through guilt, but through the grim understanding that in such encounters, appearance could dictate everything. The first officer approached his window with a brisk stride, a powerful flashlight in hand, its beam cutting through the dim interior of Robert's car. A second officer lingered by the rear bumper, his hand resting ominously on his holstered weapon. "You in a hurry tonight?" the first officer barked, his tone thick with suspicion. "No, sir," Robert replied evenly, his voice calm yet firm. "Just heading home after a long day." The officer's flashlight lingered on Robert's face, a fraction of a second too long, before darting down to his lap, the center console, and back again. "License and registration," he snapped, ignoring Robert's polite response. Robert moved slowly, deliberately announcing each action. "Reaching for my glove compartment now for the registration. My license is in my wallet, which is in my back pocket. I'll get it after this." The officer's posture remained stiff, unyielding. "Do you know why I pulled you over?" he asked, the question dripping with accusatory weight. Before Robert could respond, the officer continued, "You were driving erratically back there, swerving all over the road." Robert frowned, a hint of disbelief in his voice. "With respect, officer, I wasn't swerving. My dashcam can verify that." The officer's tone turned sharp, dismissive. "Dashcam, huh? That'll be confiscated as evidence. Step out of the vehicle." Robert blinked, surprised by the sudden escalation. "Is there a problem, officer?" "I'm complying fully." The officer's jaw tightened. "I said step out of the vehicle. Now." A knot of unease formed in Robert's stomach, but he unbuckled his seatbelt and opened the door slowly, his hands raised in clear view. The second officer moved in quickly, grabbing Robert's arm and yanking him towards the patrol car. "Is this necessary?" Robert asked, his voice still measured but now edged with concern. "I haven't done anything wrong." "Resisting, huh?" The first officer sneered, a predatory gleam in his eyes. "You want to play that game? Fine by me." The cold bite of handcuffs cinched around Robert's wrists, his mind racing. This wasn't a simple misunderstanding, it felt like something far more insidious. Profiling, plain and simple. As the officers roughly guided him into the back of the squad car, Robert glanced down the street. A few neighbors' faces flickered behind their curtains, their silhouettes illuminated by porch lights. No one intervened. This was far from over. These officers had no idea who they had just arrested, and Robert wasn't about to let this slide. The patrol car rattled as it moved down the street. Robert sitting stiffly in the back. He watched familiar landmarks blur by, but his mind was consumed by the absurdity of the situation. The two officers in the front exchanged casual banter, as if they hadn't just detained a man without legitimate cause. The younger officer, Miller, glanced back at Robert through the rearview mirror, a smirk playing on his lips. "So, what's your story, old-timer? Wrong turn in the wrong neighborhood?" Robert met Miller's gaze, unflinching. "I'm just a man trying to get home." "Yeah, sure," the other officer, Davis, a burly man with a condescending air, scoffed. "We hear that all the time. Everyone's got an excuse." Robert bit back a sharp retort. Arguing now was pointless. He took a deep breath, mentally cataloguing every detail of the encounter. He knew his rights, but he also knew the inherent power imbalance in this situation. At the precinct, the harsh fluorescent lights cast long shadows in the stark holding area. Miller removed Robert's handcuffs with a theatrical flourish. "Welcome to our humble abode. You'll be here for a while. Am I being charged with anything?" Robert asked calmly, rubbing his wrists. Davis chuckled mirthlessly. "We'll let you know once we figure that out. Sit tight." Robert was led to a small, cold holding cell. The heavy door clanged shut behind him, the sound echoing in the silence. He sat on the hard bench, a whirlwind of thoughts swirling in his mind. He had dedicated his career to upholding justice and fairness, and now he was experiencing the very abuse of power he had fought against. Outside the cell, the two officers leaned against a desk, their voices low as they reviewed Robert's license and registration. "Nothing out of the ordinary," Miller said, sounding almost disappointed. "Doesn't matter," Davis replied with a smug grin. "We'll find something. Guys like him always have something to hide." Robert overheard their exchange, his expression unreadable. He remained seated, hands clasped, his posture steady. Anger was a luxury he couldn't afford right now. He was calculating, his mind already formulating a plan. Patience, he knew, would be his most powerful weapon. Hours crawled by. Other officers passed by, casting cursory glances at the composed man in the cell. None seemed to recognize him. Robert wasn't surprised. He had only been in the city for a few weeks, having accepted the position just a month prior. Finally, as the first hint of dawn painted the sky with pale light, Robert heard footsteps approaching. A stern-looking officer, clearly of higher rank, appeared before his cell. Her badge read, "Lieutenant Johnson." She exuded an air of authority and professionalism that was a stark contrast to the two who had arrested him. She failed as she looked at Robert, then back at the paperwork in her hand. "What's going on here?" Lieutenant Johnson asked, her voice sharp. Miller stepped forward, a nervous edge to his voice. "We picked him up last night for erratic driving and resisting arrest." Lieutenant Johnson's eyebrow arched. "Erratic driving? Where's the evidence?" "We haven't processed it yet," Davis said casually, leaning against the wall. Lieutenant Johnson turned her attention back to Robert. "Sir, do you have any idea why you were stopped?" Robert stood, meeting her gaze calmly. "I was told it was for erratic driving, which I categorically deny. I also have a dashcam that can verify my version of events." Lieutenant Johnson's expression hardened as she glanced at the two officers. "You didn't review his dashcam?" Davis shrugged. "Didn't get around to it yet." Lieutenant Johnson exhaled sharply, her displeasure evident. "Get it now. And Miller, Davis, my office, now." As the two officers slunk away, Robert knew the tide was turning. But this was just the beginning of their reckoning. Later, seated across from Lieutenant Johnson in her no-nonsense office, Robert listened as she spoke. "We reviewed your dashcam footage, Mr. Jones. I've also spoken with Officers Miller and Davis. Let me be clear, this should never have happened. The footage completely contradicts their report." Robert raised an eyebrow, unsurprised, but waiting. "I'll be releasing you immediately," she added. "But I need to ask you something." She hesitated, clearly choosing her words carefully. "Who are you, Mr. Jones? You're far too composed for someone who just spent the night in a holding cell over nothing." Robert leaned back slightly, a small, measured smile playing on his lips. "I appreciate your diligence, Lieutenant. Let's just say I've been in situations where maintaining composure is advantageous." Lieutenant Johnson studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Fair enough, Mr. Jones. But I have a feeling this isn't the last we'll hear of this situation." Leaving the precinct, the morning sun felt both warm and accusatory on Robert's face. He didn't drive home. Instead, he headed to his office, parked in his reserved spot, and walked through the doors of the Atlanta Police Headquarters. His assistant, Sarah, looked up from her desk, startled. "Chief Jones, you're here early." Robert gave her a curt nod, his expression serious. "It's been a long night, Sarah. Could you prepare the briefing room for me? I need to address the department this afternoon." Sarah nodded quickly, sensing the gravity in his tone. As Robert stepped into his office and closed the door, he exhaled deeply. He knew what he had to do. This wasn't just about his personal experience. It was about the systemic issues his experience had laid bare. The public trusted him to lead, to protect, and to hold his officers accountable. That responsibility now weighed even heavier. The courtroom was packed. Word had spread quickly, and local media was eager to cover the proceedings. Cameras were barred, but reporters lined the courthouse steps, ready to pounce. Robert sat calmly at the defense table, his lawyer, Eleanor Vance, a formidable presence known for her sharp intellect and unwavering advocacy, reviewing a thick file of evidence. Across the room sat Miller and Davis, with their union-appointed attorney. Miller fidgeted nervously, while Davis tried to project an air of nonchalance. The judge, a stern woman with a no-nonsense demeanor, called the session to order. The prosecutor, a young and slightly flustered lawyer, began by outlining the initial report: erratic driving, resisting arrest. Eleanor leaned towards Robert, a confident smile on her face. "They're handing us this on a silver platter." When it was her turn, Eleanor stood, her voice resonating through the room. "Your Honor, the charges against my client are not only baseless, they are a direct result of racial profiling and a blatant abuse of power. To prove this, we will present video evidence that unequivocally contradicts the officer's statements." The courtroom lights dimmed as the dashcam footage played. The video showed Robert driving steadily within his lane, the speedometer clearly indicating 32 mph. Then came the body cam footage. The courtroom watched in silence as Miller and Davis approached Robert's car, their aggressive tone immediately apparent. Davis could be heard muttering, "Another one of these guys," followed by Miller's derisive chuckle. Gasps rippled through the audience. Eleanor paused the video. "This, Your Honor, is the professionalism exhibited by Officers Miller and Davis." She then fast-forwarded to the arrest. The footage showed Robert calmly complying, narrating his actions as he retrieved his documents. The stark contrast between his composure and the officer's escalating hostility was undeniable. By the time the video ended, the courtroom was thick with tension. Eleanor turned to the jury. "This is not just an abuse of power. It is a violation of Mr. Jones's rights, fueled by prejudice." The prosecutor stammered. "The officers believed they had probable cause." Eleanor cut her off sharply. "Probable cause based on what? Driving safely? Following instructions? Or perhaps it was the color of my client's skin?" The judge called for order. "Ms. Vance, let's keep this focused." Eleanor's voice softened slightly, but her words carried immense weight. "Your Honor, before we proceed further, my client has something he wishes to share with the court." Robert stood, adjusting his tie. He met the gaze of Miller and Davis before addressing the judge. "My name is Robert Jones," he said, his voice calm and firm. "I am the Chief of Police for the City of Atlanta. I was appointed a month ago to lead this department and address precisely the kind of issues you have witnessed here today. I chose not to disclose my position initially, so that the truth would emerge organically without any potential bias or interference. Now it has." A wave of murmurs swept through the courtroom. Miller's face paled, while Davis's smug expression vanished. The judge repeatedly banged her gavel for silence. Robert continued, "This isn't just about me. This is about a system that allows officers like Miller and Davis to operate with impunity. That ends now." The courtroom buzzed with the weight of Robert's words. Miller and Davis sat frozen, their faces etched with shock and dawning fear. The judge called a brief recess. When the session resumed, the atmosphere had shifted dramatically. The prosecution offered no further arguments. The judge, her voice firm, dismissed all charges against Robert Jones. Outside the courthouse, a media frenzy erupted. "Chief Jones, do you have a statement?" Reporters clamored. Robert raised a hand, signaling for silence. "This case isn't just about me," he began, his voice steady and resolute. "It's about accountability. It's about ensuring that every citizen, regardless of their background, is treated with the respect and dignity they deserve. As your police chief, I am committed to creating a department that embodies integrity and fairness. And as a citizen, I will continue to fight for justice." The aftermath was swift. Miller and Davis were immediately suspended, pending a thorough internal investigation. Public outrage grew as the body cam footage circulated, sparking protests and demands for reform. Community leaders united, calling for greater transparency and enhanced training within the police force. Robert's leadership was immediately tested. He convened an emergency meeting with all officers. Standing before them, his gaze unwavering, he spoke with conviction. "What happened to me was not an isolated incident. It is a symptom of a deeper problem, and as long as I am chief, it will not be tolerated." We are here to serve and protect, not to harass and intimidate. If you cannot uphold these values, then this is not the place for you. In the weeks that followed, Robert implemented sweeping changes, mandatory bias training, stricter oversight, and an anonymous reporting system for officer misconduct. The community began to see a tangible shift, though rebuilding trust would be a long and arduous process. Months later, Robert sat on a panel at a town hall meeting. A young African-American man stood up to speak, his voice filled with emotion. "Chief Jones," he said, "what you went through, that could have been me. It could have been any of us. Thank you for standing up, not just for yourself, but for all of us." Robert nodded, his heart heavy but resolute. "Change doesn't happen overnight," he replied, "but together we can build a system that truly serves everyone." As the town hall concluded, Robert lingered, watching the people leave with a renewed sense of hope. He knew the fight for justice was far from over, but he was ready for it, and now the responsibility lies with the viewers, with the community, to keep that fight alive. When injustice is witnessed, voices must be raised. If change is desired, it must be demanded. Together, the power to create a world where accountability is not just a promise, but a lived reality, exists. The core takeaway from this story is the vital importance of challenging our biases and holding systems accountable. We all carry unconscious prejudices, and unchecked power can lead to injustice. It reminds us that true leadership means not just holding others to a high standard, but being willing to confront uncomfortable truths within ourselves and our communities. Your voice matters in this ongoing pursuit of fairness. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button, share your thoughts in the comments. I genuinely want to hear your perspectives, and if you appreciate stories like these, please subscribe to the channel. Your support helps keep these important conversations going.